Hey, I'm Joe Iconis.
And I'm Jennifer Ashley Tepper, and you are listening to Album Podcast on the Broadway Podcast Network.
On this episode, we're going to be talking about my song Starting to Forget, which is one of the earliest songs on the record.
One special thing on this episode is we go deep diving into the history of Joe Iconis' senior undergrad recital in college, which is a favorite topic of mine and a really great episode for super Iconis and family fans.
Yeah, I think that this is a good one for people who are really invested in my life and career, and maybe a good one for newbies as well, because it really starts at the top. So you
In
haven't
this
you haven't missed
episode,
anything yet.
yeah, we also talk about your collaboration with Badia Farha, one of your longest collaborators and performer of this track. So this song is perhaps the second song chronologically that you wrote that appears on the album. Do you want to talk about the origin story of just how long ago you wrote Starting to Forget?
Yeah, I sure do. So I wrote Starting to Forget when I was an undergrad at NYU. And it was a song that I wrote for this musical theater writing class. And this class was, I worked with a musical theater writing private composition teacher who I believe I've talked about on the podcast, but his name is Steve Rosenhaus. He still teaches at NYU. He's a fantastic teacher. So I worked on musical theater stuff with him, but there weren't any other like musical theater writing classes when I was an undergrad at NYU for the first couple years. And then my third year, they started this musical theater writing class that was really kind of based on the BMI lab, which is what the NYU grad program is also kind of based on. But this class was taught by this guy, Alan Cohen, who is a musical theater writer. And it was a big class, and everyone every week or 2 weeks would share their work based on an assignment that was handed down to them. And so we were writing songs based on the Neil Simon play Brighton Beach Memoirs. And I had written a couple tunes so far, and it was the kind of thing where it's like I think we had like the 4 or 5, maybe 6 assignments based on Brighton Beach Memoirs. And so this assignment was for, I think, Eugene is the name of the character, and it was like a little boy, and he, I guess, is writing about his grandfather. I don't fully remember Brenton Beach Memoirs, but um, I had this assignment to write for this character, and I was kind of like, I should really just write a song about my own grandfather. I had this grandpa, his name is Grandpa Joe, and he died when I was a senior in high school. So this would have been like, just a couple years before I was writing this Brighton Beach Memoir song. And he was like a father to me. He was more than a grandpa. I loved him very much, and he was this really sort of boisterous, charismatic guy. And I realized, the older I get, I've just kept kind of like lived my life to kind of live up to what my ideas of him were as a kid, right? And so he was this very large looming figure in my life. And so when I had this opportunity to write this song for this kid in Brighton Beach Memoirs about his grandfather, I was like, oh, I should just write about Grandpa Joe, but sort of through the lens of this kid. And I wrote this song, Starting to Forget, and the song as it is on the album is uh, pretty much identical to what I wrote when I was 20 years old at NYU. And after I finished it, it really was the first time that I was like, oh, wait a minute, song this sounds like the sort of writer that I want to become. It felt like it was written by someone who was not me. It was like, and really it was like it was the first time where my voice as a writer started to like congeal. It's like the first time where I could point to something and be like, oh, that's me. Like that's my personality as a writer. That's my that's my the the things that sort of have become like sort of hallmarks of my writing. They started to take shape in that song. Even though it's a really short song, it's a really simple song. I just I wrote it and I knew, oh, that's different. There's like something different here, and
Hmm.
I think because of that, that's probably why I I since that day I've always approached writing from a really personal place. Like it's why I can only write things that I connect to because I just sort of found, oh, the way that I can write in a voice that feels really true to me is if I write from the point of view of a character, but it's filtered through my own personal experiences. And so starting to forget was like that. That was the start of that for me.
Hmm. Um, when I think of starting to forget, I think of this very early recording of it, long before album, which was generously gifted to me by your brother Phil Iconis after a holiday we celebrated together. When he was like, "You don't have a recording of my brother's senior recital," and now I do. Um, but when I remember that album I'm thinking of, which is like starting to forget, and it's still in the same format as it is today on the album, is that your senior undergrad recital, or is that
Yeah.
from grad school? So on that album, there's like obviously like there's some Black Suit stuff and there's some other songs that are still kind of like in your oeuvre. I
Uh-huh.
would be curious to know, like, after starting to forget, which we'll go back to, like, what do you think is like the third song that's on the album in terms of like chronological writing?
Oh my gosh. It's the third song on the album would definitely be Black Suit Stuff because I
Yeah,
and the
because Joey is a
first of
punk
it
rocker is in that senior recital, I think.
it was that, yeah. So starting to forget, I wrote. It was my third year, and so at NYU undergrad at that time in the composition department, you did a junior recital and a senior recital, and so starting to forget was first performed in the junior recital, and then it was again in the senior recital with the addition of Joey's a Punk Rocker. So Joey's a Punk Rocker just celebrated its 20th anniversary. It was performed for the first ever time, May 2nd, 2003.
Wow. See, I knew you'd remember. I was like, "Oh, I'm throwing this like dates thing at you," but you remembered.
I
So
do.
this performance on the album is special because obviously Badia is one of your longest collaborators. You know, you started working with her in college. But a lot of the
Yes.
songs she sung are not hits.
Badia who was literally in my senior recital and junior recital.
Crazy.
Badia was there. Badia was like
For
literally
junior
there
and
the first
senior.
time. Yes, Starting to Forget was performed, and then
Do you
20
remember
years
what
later sang it on
she
my album.
did? So she performed in both, or she was there, or what did she perform?
Performed in both. Badia performed a song called Big Fat Ruby
Hmm.
at NYU, which it was a story song, and it's a very simple song. It's the kind of song that I feel a little cringy about these days. But the hook was it was Big Fat Ruby in a little red dress, and it was about this woman who was large and wore a red dress. And at the time, it felt very exciting, and people in my family still talk about the song because they think it's the best thing I ever wrote. But Padilla, Padilla sang that, but and yes, and it took her 20 years to get to Starting to Forget, which was there.
Well, obviously, you know, Badia's been in multiple shows of yours since then, but Starting to Forget was not a song she had sung before the album, right? So how did that come about?
It wasn't, and and Badia, like she sung a bunch of songs of mine, and and she's on Things to Ruin, and you know, album was recorded a year after we recorded Broadway Bounty Hunter, which Badia is on and sings Woman of a Certain Age, amongst many other songs, and Badia is like a huge vocal presence on that album, and so for and sort of like finding a song on this album, I was thinking about a whole bunch of things as I was kind of sifting through of like, like the humans I wanted on the record and the songs I wanted on the record and where the overlap was. And because Badia is such like a galvanizing, electrifying performer, and because she's such a incredible sort of high energy performer and such an incredible comic performer, I was kind of, thinking what comedic or big bombastic song could she do? And then I kind of stumbled on this idea of her singing "Starting to Forget," which is the complete opposite from the sort of stuff I normally have her sing. And I just felt like, oh, this is there's something that feels correct about this. Because in addition to all of the huge stuff that she does, she really is an incredible interpreter of lyric. She's one of those actors where when she sings something, you understand what she's saying always, always, always. And I thought that it would connect with her. Uh, Not long before we recorded the album, Badia's dad, Al, passed away, and he was such a great man. And I've known Badia's whole family for a very long time, and her father, loved her so much. Her father came to every single show that she did, came to so many of my shows. And so the day we recorded, um, it it was a day where, I hadn't seen Badia in quite some time, and she was coming to record this song. And my aunts, who are, the greatest women, Ro and Sherry, literally both have license plates on their cars that are Be More Chill vanity plates. They came to visit the recording session. It was like the one day out of, whatever, like 14, 15 days that they were like, oh, we're going to come to the city, and we just want to see the album recorded. So they came in to visit that day. Badia was there. Badia has known them for years and years and years. And she recorded this song, which she's so, closely associated with her father who had passed away. And it was really one of the most, like, moving the times I've ever, spent professionally or personally. And it really felt like, oh, it felt like all the stuff we talk about how this thing that we do is a family, and it's more than just, some people like getting together and singing some songs, and it's more than just like some actors who are thrown together rehearsing a show. It really is like it's a life's work, and the human beings who are part of it are they're more than important. They're like the reason that it all exists. And so, being in the studio with Badia singing the song and crying with her, and then having my aunts there who, are also crying and like hugging Badia as she's singing, it was just something that felt so surreal and felt like, oh, this, yeah, it felt important, and it felt like, oh yeah, this is all for, a reason. It's like this thing that we do, it's really, worth the damn, and it means something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful when she was recording it, and then I remember I had to, like, step out to take a work phone call, and,
Mm.
like, when I came back, I was just like everyone was coming out of the studio sobbing. It was just like a wall of people crying. It's like so I'm glad I got to hear the full story about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and Badia, like she's just the greatest. Um, but and it was something we never, before I gave her the song, I never said like, oh, here's the song, which I think you'll enjoy, because it relates to your father. And she never said anything. But then, being in the studio, it was just so clear it was going on. And and I remember her saying like, I really needed to sing that song. And I'm I'm so thankful that we're in each other's lives, because it's like, without even saying the words, sometimes we just know what the other one needs. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Badia Farha, no one better.
Bad- Badia Farha, the absolute greatest.
I think I'm starting to forget his voice. The
Hey,
way he
thanks so much
spoke,
for listening
the
or
way
watching to
he
my podcast. Do me a favor and go to wherever you just listen to or watch this thing, and subscribe or like or give us a great rating or review, and then head to bpn.fm/album to find out even more information about this podcast, more ways to watch, more ways to listen, and check out my album. Thanks so much for hanging out.
fades away
Album Podcast is executive produced by Liz Armstrong, produced by Dori Berenstein, Alan Seals, Kim Garris, and the rest of the team at the Broadway Podcast Network. Be sure to visit bpn.fm/album for both audio and video versions of this podcast and to listen to Album.
Remember him still. I am starting to forget.